A few days ago, I reached out to Rabbi Adelson, who, as many of us know, was here for a number of years as our associate rabbi. And he is now a rabbi of a congregation in Pittsburgh. We talk from time to time. We just schmooze about things. I share what's going on here. He tells me what's going on there. We catch up on our family. But I specifically wanted to reach out to him this week because, as many of us know, this week the federal trial of the person who murdered 11 people in a Pittsburgh synagogue began. And I called Rabbi Adelson and I said to him, how is the community doing? Are people worried? Is this opening up old wounds? What is it that people are thinking? And he said, of course, it's very hard. Of course, the wounds which never healed are very easily opened and exacerbated. Of course, there's all kinds of discussion about the trial that's taking place and people are waiting to see what happens. But specifically, he mentioned that it's hard for people to be reading about these events being described again. It does open up, it does intensify these wounds, especially for people who lost loved ones, especially for people who were in that space, in that building while the murders were taking place. And as these realities are being shared, it reawakens our recollection of just how horrific this was. It was over 4 years ago. We all remember finding out the news. We remember how it was that we responded. And so now this community especially is being plunged back into the trauma. I want to reflect on that. And I want to reflect on what I believe we should be doing specifically as the Jewish community. And in essence, what I want to share is that we have to continue to protect ourselves and to call on other people to protect us. And at the same time, we have to continue to find joy in our tradition and also to discover how we can bring blessing, not just to ourselves, but to the rest of the world. So taking a step back, the shootings in Pittsburgh were the single deadliest attack on the Jewish community in the United States. So that sent really shock waves throughout the Jewish community. And this was part of the realization that anti-Semitism is still a problem in the United States. And yes, there were some decades, I grew up during those decades, I would call them a little bit of a bubble. Maybe it was a little bit of a golden age when anti-Semitism had receded, when rabbis weren't talking about it so much because the danger wasn't so constantly present. And now we're in a different place. Now we understand that incidents are on the rise. We understand that we cannot turn a blind eye, that we cannot pretend that the danger doesn't exist. Of course, we have to therefore be mindful of the sources of anti-Semitism, and they are many. The murderer in Pittsburgh came into that synagogue because one of the participating congregations was hosting a weekend sponsored by Hayes and was speaking about welcoming refugees. And so this person believed that the Jews were conspiring with dangerous, murderous individuals that were going to be entering into this country. And that is a form of anti-Semitism, white supremacist, right-leaning anti-Semitism, very dangerous, and a kind of rhetoric which led him to open fire on all of these people, most of them elderly, some of them Holocaust survivors, 2 of them cognitively impaired, not exactly people who one would rationally recognize as being dangerous people. But this was part of his narrative, and it is a dangerous one. And on college campuses across the country, we are seeing, and our children on college campuses are confronting the effects largely of left-leaning anti-Semitism that vilifies Israel, that delegitimizes Israel's right to exist, that makes the debate not about 1967 borders, but about 1948 borders, which question Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state altogether. And so the first thought that I want to share is that the dangers are present, that we need to be mindful of them, that we need to be able to transcend our own ideological echo chambers to recognize when it's coming from a different space. And I also want to observe that I am grateful that the White House recently released a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism that has to do with advocacy, accountability, and also education. And the education is about what happened during the Shoah. The education is also about what happened to Jewish communities in the Middle East and North Africa. And the education is also about the contributions of Jewish people to the world. So my second thought is that we need to be aware of the persecution that is taking place of the Jewish people and of all peoples. And that includes persecution around issues of gender and sexuality and ethnicity and race. Because if you think about the groups that have been persecuted, it is a broad tent. We need to protect ourselves. We need to be mindful of other people. We need to lift everyone up. And the idea of talking about the positive contributions of Jewish people, it gets me to the second piece. And that is that, to paraphrase the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, we are not to be defined as a people that are hated by the world. We are to be defined as a people that seek to have a positive and loving impact on humanity. And so we can't forget that. Now, how does that actually work? How does the combination of protecting ourselves, but also recognizing the positive aspect of our identity and our mission, how does it work? Just a couple of examples. So here in our synagogue, we have taken, as we know, measures to increase security. We have wonderful professionals. We have applied for and received grants towards security. And we have to join the professionals' efforts by being vigilant. And that includes, very specifically, we say it over and over again, we can't be letting people in behind us whom we don't know. We have to be careful. It is so unfortunate that we have to be saying this, that we have to be thinking in this vigilant way, but that is absolutely true. And what is it that we are focusing on primarily? It's not the danger. I was dancing yesterday morning with over 100 Beth Hagan children and parents. Chazan Shamash and I were there. It was explosive, these children experiencing the joy of being Jewish. Last night, we had men's club here with children and with grandchildren, and that was also a joyous explosion of our identity and of our tradition. And ultimately, we need to take that joy and we need to face outward to the rest of the world. So here, I want to just say a word about how it is that we are educating our high school students. So I had the pleasure of a senior seminar where our high school seniors and I were discussing a whole range of issues. Now, I know that we want them to be aware of the dangers that will face them when they get to college campuses, and we had several programs to help them understand what BDS is and how you respond to anti-Israel, anti-Semitic verbiage and discrimination. And we also spoke about their Jewish identities. What did they learn growing up here in Great Neck? How are they going to make Shabbat when they get to college? College is not just a dangerous place, it's also a beautiful place where their minds and their hearts are going to be expanded. We wanted them to face this next chapter, not primarily with dread, but with appropriate concern, and also with an appropriate sense of who they are in a very positive way. So I'm going to just offer a thought about the portions of the Torah that we're reading, and then I'll conclude. So we're now in the wilderness. We are Bamidbar. And we have always known how to do both, to protect ourselves and also to bring our joy into the world. So in the wilderness, we had a pillar of fire, we had Amud Esh and a pillar of cloud, and they offered protection, and we fought the Amalekites who attacked us, and we didn't just stand there waiting for salvation. And we also struggled to figure out how God's Spirit, God's Ruach, would rest upon us and how we would be able to create, when we entered into the land, a society, a community that would be just for everyone, including the most vulnerable. We can do that. We can walk and we can chew holy gum at the same time. We've always been able to do that. We've always been able to protect ourselves, but not to the point where we harden our hearts and our souls and allow our haters to define us. Our haters don't define us. We need to respond. We need to fight back. We define ourselves as a people who live joyfully and who bring justice and love to the rest of the world. So we are sending our heartfelt sympathy and empathy to the people of Pittsburgh as they relive this trauma. And I pray that we will be able to do what our ancestors knew how to do in the wilderness, which is to protect ourselves from hate and to help set the world on a course of increased understanding and love. We can do both. We've always done both. We have to continue to do both. May we be worthy of carrying on this ancient legacy. Amen.